and so on. The third way that Johnson tried to improve this was by improving ghetto housing. The Omnibus Housing Act of 1965 financed rent supplements and $8 billion worth of low and moderate income housing in the ghettos. He was trying to tackle this ghetto problem that had been really publicised through works of Black Panther, Martin Luther King, Stokely Carmichael. He was successful encouraging builders to construct reasonably priced housing. However, the ghettos remained dire in weight. Taxpayers remained unwilling to help, so in 1968 Johnson focused on obtaining to end to discrimination in housing. This would cost taxpayers nothing but hopefully alleviate the crowding in the ghettos. Happy Easter! Housing was one of the major causes of the ghetto discontent. 4/5 of the Detroit ghetto rioters arrested in 1967 had jobs paying over $120 weekly. That is nothing, suggesting that it was housing and alienation rather than poverty that caused their dissatisfaction. However, taxpayers did not want to fund large-scale improvements and opposed integrated housing. Although Johnson tried, the minority housing problem was surely too great for only one president to solve. Okay. And that's housing. He did, and it was quite, realistically, it was a big step in the right direction. Again, just like education, in terms of, for minorities, definitely a big step. But some could say it was underfunded, and the cities, especially in America now, there is still really dire ghettos. Don't need to go further into Compton or Brooklyn to find that. Another important thing to realise is the environment. This is just a little snippet, but it's still quite big because he's building on what JFK and Silent Spring, that was written by Rachel Carson, which talked about car emissions. The Wilderness Act of 1964 protected 9.1 million acres of federal land, and the Highway Beautification Act of 1965, which decreased billboard advertising and eliminated junkyards. The Water Quality and Clean Air Acts of 1965 and the Clean Water Restoration Act of 1966 gave the government the authority, the responsibility to act forcefully against air and water pollution. With these measures, Johnson began environmental and safety regulations that subsequently triggered great debate over the scale of his federal government. Johnson is very interventionist, very much different to what Nixon would do. But obviously in nowadays, it's crazy because people would criticise this of him going into people's lives, disrupting them about the environment. Look at nowadays where we are disrupting the government to be more interventionist about the environment. It's a very stark contrast of how just in the space of 50 odd years this has completely changed. I'm talking about Britain, but obviously Americans are writing about this as well. The last focus of this great society is Medicare and Medicaid. Now, in 1965, Medicare and Medicaid was established by Congress in the Social Security Act of 1965. Before this, the elderly, who had been a large population of America, had no health care due to the fact that free health care, which would be seen in Britain and Canada later on, is to them communist. Yeah, I know. This right here, and I'll quote it right now. Just between the pages where it says "Don't feed your fucking people" and "Kill as many Chinese people as you can." It's yep, right here, just right here on page 325. It says, free healthcare for all is totally right on, bro. Do that shit now, fam. That is what we do. Karl Marx, of course, and Frederick Engels were very, very key. Loved a bit of free healthcare. It's a shame they didn't live to see the NHS I think. I don't know, they died before. What a shame. Yeah. So, 19 million Americans in the subsequent year after the Social Security Act in 1966 enrolled in Medicare. Medicaid is financial assistance. Let's make this clear. Medicare is health insurance. A lot of elderly people especially did not have access to private healthcare, so this was very important in healthcare. So, due to Medicare, healthcare on poorer citizens increased from $1.3 billion to $2 billion. Oh, my balls are in, Jen. My balls are in, Jen. We'll cut that out because it's quite bad. Alright, so yeah, Medicare is very important to realise. Johnson had this was seen as a healthcare resolution. It helped to lift millions of elderly Americans out of poverty, and within a decade became so popular that no president dared to oppose it, lest he alienate the powerful grey vote. But there were problems. First, there were gaps in coverage. For example, eyeglasses. So, glasses would still have to be paid for. You could not get away with spending on glasses. Also, Medicare and Medicaid are a lot more expensive than anticipated. And this is something that I don't think Johnson really thought through, because in 1966, this isn't adjusted for inflation, but still, in 1966, Medicare cost $3.5 billion of the budget. And in 1993, under the Clinton presidency, it cost $144 billion in budget, so 5% of the GNP. And obviously, recently, under Obama, it has been changed to Obamacare. A lot of people have been, and Trump has revoked it. And it's a bit mixed match. I'm not 100% sure, but you know. So yeah, but now healthcare was also only 1/5 of the population benefited from Medicare and Medicaid by 1976. No one could really afford the proper healthcare they needed, and that still continues today. It's still a growing problem today. You know, in America, you go outside, you're smelling the delicious smell of McDonald's. You walk down the street with your fat fucking dog. You stab your own tit and just drink the fat out of it, because that's what they do. I've seen them do it. You know, you just shit. Yeah. People wonder why it's the fattest nation on earth. They can't afford vitamins. They can't afford I don't know. No one could. Just imagine getting in a car crash that wasn't your fault. Injury lawyers for you. No. Getting in a car crash that's not your fault in America. You wake up in hospital, you've got bruises, you've got your head's cracked, you've got broken knees, 7 broken ribs. It's a miracle you're alive, but then they hand you a slip of paper, and at the bottom of the paper it says $44,000, and then you die of a heart attack because that's how it works. That's just it's insane to me. It's like it's just that's one thing I like about Britain. The NHS, don't leave us, please, please, please. So, this is still... Yeah, okay. Gonna finish here. Johnson's Great Society. Good, bad. We're about to find out. The Great Society was like I said, a step in the right direction. The mindset that Johnson had for it was good. He just wanted a new reformed country, he wanted to end poverty, he wanted to progress civil rights like Kennedy wanted to. He wanted to build on Kennedy essentially, and he did in loads of areas. Like he increased the role of the state and expenditure of federal government in areas of education and welfare. Education, as we know, the HSE and HEA, ESSEA and HEA, both really did help a lot of lower class children get into college with funding. But at the same time, the expenditure of the Great Society just was so much, and it didn't really affect many people, especially with Medicare and Medicaid. Liberals criticised Johnson for not going far enough, saying that what he did was neither symbolic rather than substantive. Johnson himself said, "So little have I done, so much I have yet to do." He knew he didn't do a lot, and you can't really blame him, because what was going on during this period? That's right, Vietnam. And of course, this prohibited much progression. And in the latter few years, one big crisis that was hitting America was inflation. So it's not exactly easy to handle these social reforms with the upcoming inflation. Some see him as a hero, like Roosevelt, who wanted to reform the people, but a lot saw him as just poor in his execution of it, really. There was little impact on American cities, and the war on poverty failed. In the words of Donald Reagan, in the war on poverty, poverty won.